The fight for both F1 titles in 2024 is well and truly on as we head to the Mecca of speed, Monza, for the Italian Grand Prix. Welcome to Grid Talk. I'm Aaron Harper, and today we'll be looking ahead to round 16 of the 2024 season. And joining me today to do just that are Formula Talk's Sophia Richmond.
Hi.
And making her debut with Grid Talk is Kristin Hovarth. Welcome to the show, Kristin.
Thank you. Hello.
And before we dive into today's episode, we must first thank our sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. From the preseason NFL to college kicking off, BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. Think you know your stuff? Get in on a winner-take-all $300,000 NFL Survivor pool for the upcoming season. When the game's over, head on to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or online with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today and use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, and get in on the action. Bet online, the game starts here. And obviously, as always, gamble responsibly out there. So let's move to the on-track action. We are heading to the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, a very famous circuit. Sophia, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of the Italian Grand Prix at Monza?
I mean, the speed, as you mentioned, it's known for it. We see it in F1, we see it in all the different racing that takes place at that track. Another one as well is the unusual winners sometimes, some surprises. Obviously, we'll probably mention it later on. We had the McLaren 1-2 of Daniel Ricciardo. We also had Charles Leclerc winning in Monza. There's been some great battling and some great racing going on between drivers and even drivers in the same teams as well. So those are definitely my first memories and the first thing that comes into mind when I think about Monza. And I am so excited for this weekend. I cannot wait to watch all the racing.
Yeah, it's one of those circuits that brings back so many evocative memories for people of different ages because it's been around for so long. It's one of the oldest racing circuits. Obviously still has the historic oval banking that you can go and walk up, or you can try to at least. It's very steep, very steep. And obviously, Sophia, you mentioned the McLaren 1-2, which happened in 2021, a slightly surprise result through slightly controversial circumstances that day. We won't be getting into that, but we will dive into a little bit more McLaren because, Kristin, Lando Norris is coming off the back of a dominant win in Zandvoort, winning by over 20 seconds. The first non-Max Verstappen win by more than 20 seconds since Lewis Hamilton in 2021 at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Do you think Lando can go back-to-back and claim consecutive victories for the first time in his career this weekend?
You know, I really do. I think McLaren has had a tremendous car since Miami. And not only that, I think that both Lando and Oscar can do another McLaren 1-2 here for sure. Because Red Bull just seems to be struggling a little bit with where they are with the car, with Max finding his balance with it. And they have a lot to make up for if Zandvoort is any indication.
Yeah, absolutely they do, because you don't get beat by 20 seconds and not start sounding the alarms a little bit, especially if you're the defending champion team, defending championship leads in both standings. Sophia, are McLaren favourites heading into this race? I mean, Kristin said that she feels that Lando can definitely go on and win. Would you say Lando is favourite, or would it be maybe slightly more 50-50? We've seen over the last couple of years in this rule set that Red Bull have been very good on circuits with lots of straight lines. They've got a very slippery car. But Monza is a weird, quirky circuit because you need the straight line performance, but you need to go through corners like the Lesmos, Ascari and the Parabolica pretty well. And McLaren do corners very, very well. So are we going to see McLaren dominate again, or are Red Bull going to bounce back?
I wouldn't say maybe dominate, but I think they will have both drivers finishing where they should be compared to the Red Bulls. We've said it multiple times. Obviously, Perez, he's just not doing as well compared to previous seasons. Obviously, talking about 1-2s, there's only been 2 Red Bull 1-2s this season. That was the first 2 rounds, pretty much, of the season so far. They had a 1-2 last season, but can we expect that probably for this year? I would doubt it. McLaren have been favorites just throughout. Obviously, the upgrades, as mentioned, like in Miami, and even just like the upgrades even last season as well, coming into really good play. I'm expecting a lot from them. I'm hoping it's a 1-2 again, repeat. I would love to see it as a not-so-secret McLaren fan myself. So I think definitely we can anticipate some really good performances for McLaren, and it's definitely needed as well. I believe they're only 30 points behind Red Bull. Like, it's going to go down to the wire for the constructors. Maybe not the drivers because of how consistent Max has been, but obviously Lando's had, 11 podiums? Like, that's coming into a new record potentially as well, kind of looking at numbers. So I think it's a really good season so far to be a McLaren fan, and I'm excited to see, but definitely they should be considered for both drivers' favorites for this weekend coming compared to the Red Bulls.
It feels to me like...
I have no idea what you're talking about on being a McLaren fan whatsoever, but,
Everyone's a McLaren fan. They can't deny it. I mean, look, McLaren, they seem to be hitting their stride at the perfect point of the season. Red Bull came flying out the blocks, and they've just stumbled in the last sort of 3 months, whether it's with development or all of the hoo-ha that's been going on around the team, the different things about Kristin Hovarth and Max maybe leaving. There's just been a whirlwind of almost negative energy around Red Bull. It may, I don't know, this is pure speculation. Maybe it's just all coming home to roost at the moment in terms of they're not fulfilling the potential with that car. I feel like this weekend is another opportunity for McLaren. I don't think they'll be, like Sophia said, as completely dominant as before. But Red Bull, they go through their tyres. They've been having real problems with their tyres. And while it's not obviously the most punishing in terms of energy through the tyre circuits at Monza, you still need to have good grip, because if we saw in 2018, Kimi Räikkönen burnt through a set of tyres and just was left as a sitting duck by the end. So even if you're in front, you've got to manage your tyres well, and Red Bull have really struggled with that in the last few races. But look, Max Verstappen isn't a triple world champion by accident. He knows how to get the job done. He's shown it on a number of occasions, especially this season. He's not always had the best car. The last win he won in Spain, he didn't have the fastest car. That was a win that he went and got. It's a little bit more difficult now because, as we've said, McLaren much, much quicker and much closer to the pace, so maybe even setting the pace. But it's going to be a fascinating battle. As you said, 30 points the difference in the Constructors' Championship, 70 in the Drivers' Championship. And if Oscar is to get in between Lando and Max, that reduces the sort of average points gain that Lando needs. So that's critical, isn't it, Kristin? Because obviously Lando did that little favour in Hungary for Oscar, and this really now could pay dividends.
It really could. If you look at the stats right now as it goes, and let's just say Lando takes first in the next 9 races and Max takes second, it is a 7-point difference without the sprints. But even then, it's a 3-point difference. They're within that 7 points, which was the difference of what Lando missed out on not having that win in Hungary. So yes, Oscar can get in the way. He's not the only one though. Statistically speaking, if Lando and Max finish 1-2 for the rest of the races, come on. I mean, that's going to be a phenomenal situation, like we watched with Max the year before and everything that he did. So there's a lot of things that can get in the way, but it's just very interesting that coming into Monza, it's a 7-point difference between the two of them. It makes it even more exciting, I think, for us as fans.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's be honest, Red Bull were outstanding at times in the last couple of years, and we saw it with Mercedes and other teams before. That endless dominance does get a little bit sort of boring for the average fan watching at home. So having this competition at the front is making the sport much more exciting. I think the sport is in possibly the best health it's been for well over a decade. Much longer than that, maybe going back to sort of the early 2010s. Now, just before we talk about Ferrari and their home race, if you're enjoying this podcast, we'd love it if you could take 5 seconds just to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. So if you're one of those 72% of people who aren't yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, please help us out and give us a like and a subscribe. Now, Kristin, I just mentioned Ferrari. It's their second home race of the season. The Tifosi are going to be out in force. What are their hopes? They've come off a surprisingly good result in Zandvoort. We didn't expect to see a Ferrari on the podium with Charles Leclerc. That was a fantastic drive from him. And He's done well at Monza in the past. What do you think they can achieve this weekend?
He has. I think there is potential for a podium for Ferrari, and I think it could be open to either Charles or Carlos. The energy alone at this race is just something like it is in Zandvoort as well. And just to see those huge Ferrari flags flying everywhere. And that energy is picked up by the drivers. Now, if they can figure out everything that they did right in Zandvoort and bring it to Monza, yes, definitely they have a good chance of getting on the podium. They don't actually know why they did so well. They were surprised, like you said, at their finish. So I think when it's your home race and you have energy like that, and you do have the history that provides, for a podium. Okay.
Sorry, we can stop there and we can cut that and you can start again if you want to.
Do you want to cut the whole thing or do you want to just cut the end of it?
Just if you can cut the end of it and sort of pick it up where it left off, that would be great. But if not, then we can just...
I can. I think with the history that Monza provides for Ferrari, they definitely have the hometown crowd behind them and they can get a podium. Absolutely.
It's going to be a tricky one for Ferrari because their car doesn't seem to do sort of longer corners particularly well, not at least on a qualifying lap. But it does do slow corners and it gets out of slow corners very well. Obviously, they won the Monaco Grand Prix. So, Sophia, it's going to be a bit of a mixed bag for Ferrari, isn't it? They could do well, but they could also be rubbish.
Yeah, they've been very much hit or miss. Obviously, they've had the battle even last season, I think it was, at Monza, obviously, for the last podium. And I believe it was a 10th difference. There's been contacts, it's been battling. It's pressure as well, obviously, because, it's pressure, but not because obviously it was coming into where Carlos Sainz was also going to go into next year as well. So obviously that's kind of laid off a little bit of his pressure now that he's confirmed to be at Williams. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. I think they are possible for both drivers to finish in the points. That's kind of a given because looking at historical data from them as well. But battling for a podium, especially as Kristin said, they didn't not know what actually went right last weekend. So maybe they might be able to do a back-to-back fluke and get a podium, but I think you won't know until probably when lights go out on Sunday. That's going to be the case for Ferrari, I think, this weekend.
So, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good in sport, but you need to know why you were lucky. If you don't know why you were lucky, you can't repeat it. And talking of things that are Italian, there's a certain young driver who may or may not be a Formula One driver this time next year, approaching his home race in Monza. And that driver, of course, is Andrea Kimi Antonelli, a Mercedes junior driver currently racing with Prema in Formula 2. He's making his free practice debut this weekend, his Formula 1 debut at his home race. Sophia, when are we going to see him announced as a Mercedes driver for next year?
It's rumored it's going to be announced this weekend. Obviously, they've had to wait until his 18th birthday, which was just after Spa. Obviously, he has done some behind closed doors testings and has proven well in the Mercedes. So I think this will kind of maybe kick off his campaign for the seat next year. Obviously, there's been conversations with Toto talking to media and accidentally slipping, saying George and Kimi for next season. So, it's the biggest known secret, I guess you can say, that he will take the Mercedes seat. Now, oh God, controversial enough. I've said it multiple times. As much as I love to see these junior drivers come into these F1 seats, I kind of would have expected him to go more for maybe one of the other teams like Williams. Obviously, that's not applicable now. But I've said it both on Formula Talk. I've said it on here as well. The jump is, I think, a little bit too much for too soon. I know, obviously, there's so much pressure on him. He has done well, obviously. I believe he had the track record after his second lap attempt. When they did the behind the testing, I can't remember which track it was. I think it was Barcelona. So there is definitely skills and development for the driver. I just think to go from FRECA to Formula 2 in one season with a new generation of a car, not doing so well with Prema. Obviously, Ollie Behrman's doing the same as well. But yeah, I think to go from F2 then now to F1, I think it's a little bit too soon for my liking. I think maybe having some more free practices and maybe give another season of F2 would have been probably the best case. But obviously, seats available, why not take it? It just means that potentially the F2 winner of F1 Mercedes Academy of Paul Aaron or even Isaac Hajar might not even have a seat. So that might go 6 years of the F2 champion not getting a straight seat as well, which is not what you want to have in junior series at all. But be interesting to see. I'm excited. There'll be a lot of eyes and pressure on him, especially in F2 and also now with the free practice at his home race. But who knows?
Kristin, where do you fall on this? Is Kimi Antonelli ready for Formula One, or does he need to spend more time sort of sharpening his tools?
Well, kind of like I said to you guys in the pre-show, whether he's ready or he needs some more tools, I don't think Toto was going to miss out on an opportunity like he did with Max to have such a talent that he really believes, can grow into greatness. He doesn't want to miss out on it. And I don't blame him for that. And, I think we can always use a little more practice, at anything that we do that will enhance our career with whatever it is. And he can use more practice. And I think, though, he might surprise all of us. It's a lot to put on him at this race all in one, it seems like. But I think we'll see a lot in his FP1 and then just how he potentially handles the situation of being announced potentially, as an F1 driver and all of that. He'll have great support behind him. So if this rumor is true, and I hate talking about rumors half the time, but I think this might be one of the worst kept rumors out there, like you said, he's gonna be just fine, and he's gonna find his way with all of the support that he has from Mercedes as well.
I think it's a really interesting one because I've said all along that Toto Wolff, this is kind of playing to your point, Kristin, that Toto Wolff wouldn't have mentioned Kimi Antonelli's name in the aftermath of Lewis Hamilton signing for Ferrari if he wasn't serious about putting him in the car. If he didn't think he was even remotely ready, he wouldn't have bothered saying his name. He would have been locking in Carlos Sainz or signing somebody else, or, just wheeling out a big barrel of cash for the Verstappens to say, how much will it take for you to leave? Things like that. But he truly believes that Kimi Antonelli is the next superstar Formula One. And look, Lewis Hamilton proved it. You can go into a top team as a rookie. If you're good enough, you will swim. The interesting factor at play is actually how good the Mercedes will be next season. They look to be back on the right track now. And earlier in the year, the decision was easier to take for me because Mercedes weren't anywhere near a title fight. Next year, if they continue their development, they could be in with an outside chance of certainly several race wins, maybe a championship till with one of their drivers. You'd think it would be George Russell in that scenario. Even then, it's still an outside shot for me because Red Bull and McLaren are just that little bit too far ahead. But I think Antonelli has shown enough. That wet weather drive at Silverstone in the sprint, he was absolutely exemplary. I just think there's so much talent there. Mercedes have a very unique environment as well in their famous no blame culture. They've brought George Russell through. He's not an idiot when it comes to driving a Formula One car. As much as social media might lead you to believe, George Russell knows how to drive a racing car. Kimi Antonelli will push him every inch of the way. I think that is a very exciting lineup, considering the 26 rule change and what Mercedes have done in previous years. Let's forget 2022 in terms of rule changes and getting things right. We'll ignore the 2022 ever happened, but that's fine. So yeah, Mercedes look like they have a very young driver lineup, and potentially Toto's going to be asking for 3-car teams soon because he desperately wants to sign Max Verstappen as well. He can't have his cake and eat it though. So let's move away from Mercedes in the top 4 teams. Kristin, we need to give a mention to the teams like Aston Martin, Williams, VCarb, Alpine, Williams and Sauber. Which of those do you think is most likely to spring a surprise? I mean, look, we could probably rule out Sauber because they have been dreadful. Let's not be around the bush. But Williams have got history of going well at Monza. Haas have got really good form with Nico Hülkenberg. I did forget to mention them. Aston Martin quietly getting better. Who do you think is going to be maybe the surprise emergence of the midfield?
Well, I'm doing it based on who I'd like to see. I'm not going to lie. Is it going to be what it is? If we could see through that crystal ball, I think we'd all be working directly in F1 right now. But I'm going to say this. Daniel Ricciardo has won a race here. Yuki Tsunoda is so hungry to prove himself, okay? The car itself, though, unfortunately, has not been giving what they have been hoping for. as much as I would like to see VCarb come up and do so much better than they're doing, it's still my wish and my dream. Williams, after this last, weekend, rough with Logan crashing, rough with, Alex being disqualified because of their floorboard. I don't see them coming up, unfortunately. Aston Martin kind of surprised me this last weekend in Zandvoort. So I think they may have a bigger potential than anybody out there. Now that Haas actually has everything out of Zandvoort, the trucks on their way, they will be in Monza. I would love to see both Nico and Kevin go out there and do some tremendous things this weekend. They've had a lovely season thus far, a surprising season, I think, for both of them. Nico was really struggling last weekend too. So taking everything into consideration, at least they're going to be there. That's the big story there. And Alpine, Pierre had a lovely weekend as well. Those two, Ocon and Gasly, cannot get on the same page, literally and figuratively, I think. And I don't, Alpine has just been struggling internally and with their car. So I don't think they're going to go anywhere. So I'm going to say between Aston and VCarb, probably.
Well, VCarb in their former guises have amazing history at Monza. Obviously, the 2008 victory as Toro Rosso with Sebastian Vettel, a wet race. He even started from pole position. That weekend, for anyone who hasn't ever watched it and not quite sure of how good Toro Rosso were that weekend, Sebastian Vettel's teammate, Sebastian Bourdais, qualified fourth. He didn't start there because he stalled on the grid on the formation lap, so he had to start last. It wrecked his day. But the Toro Rosso that day had the speed to be at the front. And obviously in 2020, Pierre Gasly, how can we ever forget?
Right.
Top of the podium in that wacky race where he's chased to the line by Carlos Sainz. Now, Sophia, would you go along with Aston Martin and VCarb as the ones to watch, or is there someone else you're going to be having your eye on?
Yeah, actually, I would say the Williams as well. They've scored points every year for the last 3 years. Obviously, Alex Albon had an amazing race last season coming into P6. So it definitely is something that might be good to see with the Williams, especially off the back of how it went last weekend with the disqualification and obviously the car catching on fire. Will it be both Williams? Absolutely not. I put it lightly. I think Alex, this is a good track for him. And then another team as well. And obviously, Kristin, you kind of said no, but I might have some faith in the Alfa Romeo, or the Kick Sauber, I should say now, obviously, because they've also gotten points the last 2 years with it. This is a track that Bottas has done very well. Obviously, he's been very quiet this season, even Joe as well. Obviously, last weekend we don't talk about anything. It was just more of a data collection race for them more than anything else. But I think they might come out with a good surprise. I'm hoping, because there's 3 drivers still without points, I'm hoping it's going to be either one of the Kick Saubers, probably not Logan, unfortunately, but I think they might actually come for a good surprise. And especially with the constructors being so close at the bottom as well, they definitely need the points given as well, because they can come into 2025 with new sponsorships with being at the bottom of the grid.
I think your faith might be overestimating them.
That would be my bold prediction, let's be honest. I always come out left field, so.
The last race, what did we have? 6 or 7 constructors in the top 10? I would love to see it that way again for this race.
I mean, I would really like to see a Logan Sargent redemption arc for Monza, because Williams have had great success in recent years. Obviously, Nick De Vries parachuting in for Alex Albon when he had appendicitis and starting that whole domino effect, which some will have you believe is still continuing. It's just the butterfly effect of Nick De Vries, isn't it? Alex Albon, it starts with appendicitis with Alex Albon, it goes to today, and is still carrying on. But I would love to see Logan pick up a couple of points just to actually prove to people that he's not this meme crash character. He is a legitimate racing driver. He has skill. He almost beat Oscar Piastri in Formula 3 way back when, but for circumstances, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, he would have won that title. So, that proves the caliber of driver that you're actually dealing with. But yeah, I think along those lines, we're looking at maybe Aston Martin, Williams. This might be a difficult weekend for Alpine. VCarb could spring a surprise. Ricardo, as you mentioned, Kristin, has gone well there. Yuki Tsunoda has had a decent season. Sauber, Haas could also spring a surprise. Hülkenberg has been very strong this season. So plenty to look out for, though, as they scrap over basically 2 positions, 9th and 10th. That's it. If it's monopolised by the top 4 teams, you're scrapping over 3 points for everybody else. So that brings us to a little prediction section for the preview. So I'm going to ask you for your race winner, your podium, and a bold prediction. Sophia, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of mentioned a bit of what I kind of want to see. So I think I'm hoping it's McLaren 1-2. Oh, I hate putting one over the other, but I think Lando will do a back-to-back and Oscar will be P2. I think Max will come out P3. So that's my kind of podium. My bold, I'm still standing by it. I think either the kick or I guess I'll throw Logan into the mix. Those 3 drivers without any points, they will score. One of those drivers will score at least a point this weekend. Have some faith, maybe, hopefully, I guess, with it. And my pole, I think Max will actually get pole, though. I think it'll be quite... The DRS is so powerful, especially on that main straight. Red Bull are the team to be when it comes to power and strength on the DRS. So I think Max will take the pole, though.
McLaren's new rear wing has given them better DRS effectiveness, so that might not be quite such a disparity now between the McLaren and the Red Bull, but I think Red Bull still hold all the aces when it comes to DRS and how it sort of influences their top speed. Coming to you then, Kristin, who is your race winner? Who's on the podium? And what's your bold prediction?
Okay, I am going to say that the race winner, I think it could be Lando Norris again. Oh my gosh. My podium is going to be Lando, Oscar, Charles Leclerc. Right. I have eliminated Max off of there. That's my bold prediction, is Max is going to fight his way, unfortunately, off the track in this race.
I love how you phrase that, fight his way off the track, because he's been fighting the Red Bull and suddenly, like a bucking bronco, it's going to just throw him off the circuit. In my mind's eye, that's what I've got. That's
bold and that's off the cut, because I had no idea that we were going to do this at the podcast. So there you go.
Excellent. Thank you for that. For what it's worth, I'm going to go with a Lando Norris victory. I'm going to go Max Verstappen second, and I'm going to have Lewis Hamilton on the Monza podium in the Mercedes. And then my bold prediction is that Daniel Ricciardo will score in the top 10. So I won't say points, because obviously he can only score 1 if he's 10th, but he'll finish in the top 10. So yeah, excellent predictions. Obviously, let us know what you think. You can let us know on the socials. I might as well plug them now while I'm here. My mouse will move so I can scroll my script. Found it. Make sure you follow us on social media at Grid Talk UK. And you can let us know on all of the social platforms there. This is now the opportunity where we give our panelists an opportunity to promote anything they're involved with. So, Sophia, you are the host of Formula Talk, our sister show, the V-carb to our Red Bull. Can you tell us everything about Formula Talk?
Yeah, definitely. So, Formula Talk, we cover primarily F2 and F3. So, hoping to get an episode out before Monza starts. It's the last race of the F3 season, and it's going to go down to the wire. Really good one. If not, we will be doing a post-race episode. You can find us where you listen to the Grid Talk UK back catalogs on Spotify, Apple Music, podcasts. You can also find me with Everything F1 and also F1 Chronicle, where I do articles as well and a few clips and videos for them covering primarily F2 and F3. But yeah, really happy we're racing back again, and thank you for having me again on as a panel.
No worries, you've been fantastic. Kristin, anything you would like to promote, anything you're involved in podcast-wise? Or
I am an independent freelancer, but I have started writing now. I've got a few articles out with F1Chronicle.com as well, so I've been enjoying that immensely.
Excellent. You've been also fantastic on
Thank you for having me.
No worries. Thank you.
It's been a blast.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. You've been excellent. And for myself, you can find a bit more from me. I'm AHGP. It's a F1 Manager playing channel. So we do some live streams. We've got an F1 Manager 24 Creator Team series where we tap into the new game and we're taking the AHGP team all the way to, hopefully, the top of Formula One. So lots of fun things to get involved with there. And obviously, if you enjoy it, obviously you're listening to this podcast, so hopefully you'll tune in for the Monza post-race podcast. So you can find it on YouTube, where most episodes are recorded live, and you can have your answers questions answered from the chat. You can also listen to us on Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Cast. Just search Formula One Grid Talk for our back catalogue of shows, where you'll also find all of the Formula Talk shows, as Sophia mentioned. Make sure you follow us on the social platforms. If you're feeling generous, consider supporting us on Patreon for exclusive access and behind-the-scenes content. And make sure you subscribe so you know when every episode is coming out. We'll be back with plenty more F1 content very, very soon. My thanks to Sophia and to Kristin for their time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for listening. This was the Grid Talk podcast presented by Bet Online. We'll see you in the next episode. It's bye for now.